Nigeria marked its 64th independence anniversary a few days ago, and the nation's role in global affairs remains a central topic of discussion. Now, despite grappling with significant economic and security challenges, Nigeria continues to assert itself as a major player on both the regional and international stages. Nigeria plays a pivotal role in regional organizations such as the Economic Community of West African States, called ECOWAS, and the African Union, having contributed to peacekeeping missions and regional security initiatives, highlighting its dedication to stability across the continent. Additionally, Nigeria has bolstered its global partnerships with key nations, including China, the United States, and members of the European Union. These relationships have spurred significant investments in sectors like infrastructure, energy, and agriculture, amongst others. But how well has the giant of Africa fared when it comes to sustained growth and influence on the continent and in the world? Joining us to discuss this is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Protocol, Ademola Oshodi. Mr. Oshodi, thank you so much for joining us on the conversation. Mr. Oshodi, can you hear me? Okay, so I think we just have, all right. So Mr. Ademola Oshodi, can you hear me now? Good evening to you.
Yes, I can. Thank you for having me.
All right, it's a pleasure having you around, sir. Now, we are talking about 64 years of being independent as a nation. So let's start by talking about Nigeria's influence on the continent. We look at the decades past efforts when it comes to areas around peace, security for the continent, peace missions that has brought about stability on the continent. Let's start from there. Let's look at the influence Nigeria has had and look at the comparison as regards what we've seen play out now.
Thank you. Nigeria's position in Africa is tremendous. It has a lot of clout based on so many reasons. It has the largest population. It has one of the most dynamic population. It has one of the largest economy, and of course, it exports its culture. It's quite a unique African nation in the fact that it's brought tremendous strides within Nigeria and outside. Nigeria is also the leader and creator of ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West Africa. So Nigeria's role in West Africa and also in Africa, especially historically, fighting for the liberation of countries in Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Mozambique, Angola, and also playing a pivotal role in United Nations peacekeeping on the continent is paramount. It's really something that cannot be challenged. Nigeria is the leader of Africa, and it's not a debatable issue in many regards.
A few people would wonder or think, because you talked about Nigeria liberating other African countries, but a few people would think, is Nigeria itself liberated when you look at its socio-economy and you look at its political affairs? Now, a few people think that Nigeria's influence has been waning for over the years when we look at the personal challenges that are tore through socio-economic lines, and other African countries like South Africa, Kenya, and even Rwanda taking center stage when it comes to continental and global events. I'd like to take your reaction on that particular perception.
I don't think that's anything to compete with what Nigeria has done or is doing or can do. Of course, if you have, for instance, in East Africa, you have dictators that have been there for many decades, and they can basically pull their weight and go unchallenged. Then that's a different thing. Nigeria is the leader, and let me explain why he's the leader. Beyond the population, Nigeria provides tremendous amount of security for West Africa. Nigeria provides a tremendous amount of economic development for West Africa. Nigeria attracts a lot of investment. When Nigeria sneezes, West Africa and parts of Africa catches a cold. Even South Africa. Nigeria provides tremendous amount of work power for countries around the world and also in other parts of Africa. I can go on about Nigeria's pivotal role in peacekeeping, which I mentioned earlier, and Nigeria's role in providing stable democracy in West Africa throughout the time of the 90s with Liberia, Sierra Leone, and also I think we did some intervention in Gambia in recent times. So it's an unnatural, unparalleled position it has. You could talk about what any country is doing or any leader is doing as today. It does not carry the weight and the historical significance of what Nigeria, and in certain cases, even Ethiopia, is also even a closer rival to Nigeria than any other country you just mentioned. That's in sub-Saharan Africa. So yes, it's quite a clear situation.
Now, we are talking about a country that has struggled economically for a couple of years now due to government policies. We're talking about a government, or a country rather, that Sahel states like Niger, Burkina Faso, Guinea have called their bluff because its bluff because of the military incursion that we've seen, and the fact that we have an ECOWAS and an AU, a regional body on the continent that has not really done well. And we have an ECOWAS that has the president of Nigeria as the chair, but seems not to have done anything significant, so to speak, for these African countries. So when you look at these areas and you look at the Nigerian economy compared to other economies on the continent that have seen stability and a trajectory of growth, and other African countries that have done well in several sectors, talking about aerospace, agriculture, even oil, that they've seen a little bit of modesty when it comes to appreciable growth in those lines. Don't you think that Nigeria somehow is struggling on those sides? And it probably might seem as though it seems not to be hitting the mark when we say it is the giant of Africa.
I don't think that phrase or that title, Giant of Africa, is debatable. I really don't think. I don't think you can talk about any other country in Africa that comes close to Nigeria's position, Nigeria's attributes, and Nigeria's potential. It's just not debatable. You can talk about China, India, that were quiet for many, many, many decades, and look at China and India now. It just takes a few years of stability and economic prosperity to see a giant wake up, and Nigeria is going through that process now. I mean, you could talk about other countries that were very close to India that were basically, developing rapidly. But you can't compare that to India now. You can't compare it to China. You can't compare China to what you can't compare Japan to what China is. You can't compare Singapore to what China has developed to. You can't, there's so many other countries that were, latent in the development, just like Nigeria. But it's just a matter of time to actually become even more clear, because I think it is clear enough, but even more clear to any other person, any other country that
you said,
claim to have that position.
Mr. Oshodi, you said it's a matter of time. I'm wondering how long.
To make it clear, to make it clear. I think we're in the right trajectory. I think we're in the right phase right now. We have political stability. We just had that for the past, I think, since 1999. We have economic reforms that is restructuring our economy to make it even more self-reliant and make us attract more investments. We have a very, very clear and stable electoral process that is giving confidence to investors and to Nigerians, regardless of people's disputes and questions.
Are those disputes and questions not valid? We've seen a couple of people come out to talk about.
In any situation, yeah. In anything, everything is disputed and valid. In Rwanda, there's no election. How do you dispute that? We've had South Africa that has taken over, that has a very stable democracy, but it was controlled by the Europeans, by the Boers, by the English. So Nigeria is truly an African making and an African giant. So we have challenges. All countries have challenges. But I think if you're narrow-minded or too tunnel vision to look at today, then you miss the whole point. The whole point is from 1960 to now. Nigeria has grown. Nigeria's economy is massive. The population, the Nigerian culture, our movies, our music. I can go on about how our arts. We've exported this. We've attracted people to our country, to our culture. People have imitated that. It's not just money. It's also the cultural export we have, the cultural attraction, the development. There's no other place in Africa where we wear natives around the continent, and they can easily identify you as a proud Nigerian. You don't have to wear suits and ties to resemble any European person. But that's just a cultural example. But I think the most important thing we have going on in Nigeria is our stability and our growth and our potential. You cannot in any ways ignore the potential of a giant in the making. And that's, it's simple as that.
Okay. Now, of course, you are well aware of the various agitations coming from various quarters, even the protests that we've seen permeate the polity a couple of months back now, with Nigerians clamoring for a change in the style of leadership, clamoring for a change in the style of governance, clamoring for accountability, transparency, clamoring for the citizens themselves to earn well, rather than have, the political elites having to enjoy the bulk of the gains that you have actually, expressed this evening. Would you say that these agitations or these protests coming from Nigerians are misplaced?
Well, basically, I think I was invited to speak on international affairs, issues of Nigeria in Africa, especially with the United Nations conference that just ended. The issues around domestic issues you talked about is an ongoing matter, and I think the government has its own people to speak on that behalf. But I can clearly tell you that any agitation that is experienced in Nigeria right now is nothing unique to Nigeria. It happened in Ghana, it happens in Rwanda, it happens in South Africa, it happened in Ethiopia. I can list all the countries, Egypt. Nigeria is a democratic country. People have a right to express themselves. It's how you basically express yourself is what is the issue here. Is it violence? Is it through democratic means? That is the key here. So I don't think we should single out Nigeria with whatever challenges we're facing and think it's unique to us. If a country is going through a reform process, it's painful, but I don't think it's different from what is happening in any other parts of Africa, where you can express yourself without any adequate repression.
All right, now Nigeria, by a large extension, Africa is faced with, like part of the things you said. We're looking at socio-economic upheavals, political instability, if you would agree with me on that. We have climate change, terrorism, food insecurity, bad debts, weak currency, and a fight by world powers for its rich resources. Now, Africa is pushing for a permanent representation on the UN Security Council. Will this solve the country's problems? Would it also solve the continent's challenges?
Why would it solve it? It just gives us an opportunity to be on the table. If you're not on the table, then you're on the menu. They'll eat you alive. Nigeria has to be on the table with all the major powers to fight our case. You mentioned climate change, the industrialized West, the industrialized North, manufacturing at the alarming rate, including China. All these greenhouse gases and everything's affecting Nigeria. Look at the floods in Borno State. Look at the erosion in Southeast. Look at the massive, in many ways, the upturn in the weather. 1 minute it's raining, the next minute extremely hot. So all this affects us, and it causes security concerns because you have herders, nomads coming down south to graze their cattle in where farmers and settlers are. So it causes a lot of stress and tension in society. So this is climate change as it happens. It's affecting everybody, and we need to be on that table to be able to formulate policy, execute policy that affects us. The West they have the money to curb all these things. We need to tell them to give us the money because they're causing the damage. They're really causing the damage, and it's causing a lot of friction. You talk about the Sahel part of West Africa. the reason we're having so much insecurity is there because people have no jobs. They are dead. It's becoming very desert-like, and people are migrating, and there's no other option but to take up arms, whether for sectional reasons or for religious reasons, and take on the state. And there's coups, there are coup attempts and coups. So this is climate change, and Nigeria needs to be on the table to talk about not just climate change, but also other things that affect us. The loan system, the tax system. You know, you can pay something on Facebook or Twitter, and we will not take advantage of the money, the taxes of that. It's some country in the West, could be Ireland or America, that will take advantage of those taxes. So we need to ensure that the money they make, all this online business, we in Africa, in Nigeria in particular, can take advantage of that. So being on that table gives us that opportunity. Just one of few.
Sorry to butt in, but we've seen, a few international organizations and the West, Europe, China, and the likes, even Russia, provide funds. They've given funds in grants, in loans, financial aid to African countries to mitigate the impact of insecurity or climate change and some other issues that Africa as a continent has been faced with. But then we've not seen commensurate development or implementation of efforts or measures to deal with these issues that the continent has been faced with. So if you're saying that you will be needing more funds as a continent from these bodies, how well are we so sure that these funds will be used for their intended purpose when the ones that have been given before have not really done well?
Okay. I didn't talk about funds. I said we need to go to the table to speak with them about climate change. It doesn't have to be funds. It could be how they emit, where they should curb it, how they should ensure that when we say stop in our area because you've exhausted the fish conditions. When we say that we also have a right to expand our coast for other reasons, they should accept that. It's not just issues of them giving us money for climate change, but they can find ways to mitigate their mission. They can find ways to ensure that they give us the expertise in many ways in changing, diverting our energy ways to a different way. It doesn't have to be money; it could be training. In some cases, the expertise they have, the knowledge they have, they can share that with us. So, and even if they do drop the funds, which they are, the problem is massive. The problem is enormous. You cannot. At how much are they dropping for all the damages and all the years and years of neglect that is caused the sub-Saharan Africa, the migration, the strife, the civil war? A lot of it is based on climate change. A lot of it is based on the fact that people's livelihood have changed. A lot of it is based on government not having the funds to be able to mitigate or to avoid these issues. So it's also their expertise. It's also them avoiding their practices. They should change their ways. They should stop using coal. I think United Kingdom just stopped using coal. The last coal furnace just stopped a few days ago. China should stop burning coal also. And America should also find ways of stopping coal. Okay. So things like that has nothing to do with funding or sending money to Africa.
Okay, so let's look at the area of infrastructure, energy, and of course other areas that has to do with agriculture too, and the need for expansion, building of infrastructure along those lines. Now, would you say that the Nigerian government has done creditably in those areas?
I'm still not sure where this question is coming from. I'm a development expert. I speak on international affairs. I believe this question infrastructure is based on maybe foreign partnership, if that's what you mean. Yes.
No, I'm even talking about Nigeria, as it were, in terms of government intervention what it has done in terms of funding. Of course, we know that there are always budgetary allocations for different sectors of the economy, and those funds or those monies are needed for infrastructural development, the growing of the agricultural space, and of course, we're talking about renewable energy and other initiatives along those lines. And I'm asking if the government has really done well with the financial resource it has to develop these areas.
And I will tell you clearly, I'm an international affairs enthusiast and expert. I'm not sure I can answer that question adequately. I think if you had somebody else that has a very clear understanding of the economic development of the government, anything else, they would be better positioned to answer that for you. But I can tell you that the international community, with a lot of foreign aid in the past, have assisted us. They've assisted us with energy, especially with the Power Africa, with initiative by Obama. It's tried to provide an easier, cleaner energy alternative for Nigeria. And it's also been the European Union has also provided a lot of governance assistance regarding our oil production and the right approach towards it, especially. And I also worked with the British government a while back in their in providing again the expertise on how we do infrastructural development in Nigeria, and especially in the north, and also our tax collection in even the Lagos state. So in that area, I think I can share my expertise on.
Okay, so let's just look at the way forward now for Nigeria in terms of consolidating on various achievements that this administration or the country itself has recorded. Number one, in the line of security, we've seen the Nigerian government, channel the security chiefs to go head on and toes on against the insurgents, most especially in the north. And we've seen an appreciable record of success in those areas. But then that is one of the things inhibiting the growth of the country in terms of agriculture, security, businesses, and every other sides. What more do you think a country like Nigeria, with its status and its might and influence, can do to see that it brings about security for lives, for people, for its jurisdiction, and of course the region?
Thank you. I can only speak on the area of the international relations aspect of things. I think Nigeria needs to work very closely with the Economic Community of West Africa, ECOWAS, in providing leadership regarding the crisis we're experiencing there, especially that almost 4 countries there have been taken over by military regime. We need to ensure that the return back to democratic governance. This democratic governance provides a good level of governance, stability, and investments. So the people in Mali, in Guinea, in Burkina Faso, and Niger need to understand the fact that following the military will not provide security, and their crisis also affects our crisis. We don't want a situation whereby there's a copycat situation happening all over the West Africa because people feel they have gotten away with it. So security in Nigeria depends a lot on our neighbors, depends a lot on Cameroon also, ensuring they do a partnership in fighting the Boko Haram and the ISWAP elements in the northeast, especially around the Borno Yobe axis. So, and that's also very important. But I would also mention the fact that our international partners, the Americans and the French, play a key role there also. Their partnership, their expertise, in so many ways, whether covert or in providing military assistance, helps us also fight these insurgents in the north, the bandits within Nigeria, and also ensure that we find, in many ways, soldiers that are well trained, intelligence officers that are very capable in ensuring that the peace and stability of the country is upheld, and that's so key.
Okay, you mentioned these cell states, Burkina Faso, Niger, Guinea, and the likes, as regards the reinstallation or restoration of democracy, so to speak, in those countries. From the feelers we've gotten so far, it seems as though citizens of these countries are at peace with the military regime that is in place in their
Are
domain.
you serious? Are you actually serious?
No,
I don't think you've
so
got.
that is the
I don't
feel.
think
Yes,
you.
that's why I said that is the feel that we
I
get.
think you're. I think that's your feel you're getting from social media.
No, not social
You
media.
cannot challenge.
It's not
It
social
is
media.
because
So we've actually
you
interacted
cannot
with a couple.
challenge.
We've actually
You cannot
interacted. Sorry,
challenge a
Mr.
military
Oshodi.
government.
Mr. Oshodi, we have actually
Yes.
interacted with a couple of citizens over the course of our programs and news. We've gotten feelers as to the fact that they seem open to having a military rule whereby it brings about stability, because they feel that the democratic dispensation that has been in their country over time has been fraught with impunity, with corruption, with a whole lot of stuff that actually affected their countries negatively. So that's why I'm bringing it to the fore now, that if they feel comfortable about that, is there a need to reinstall?
Well, first of all, I question your premise that they feel comfortable about that. I really don't think that's the case. I think, of course, if there's a change in government, in any government, there's jubilation, whether it's by arms or by the ballot. But their lot is generally worse off now than it was with the democratic government.
Can you share with us
all the indices?
Kindly share with us when you say worse off.
Let me speak. All the indices shows that there's more insurrection, there's more conflict. They're attacking people, they're killing people, they're even killing Russian mercenaries that are there to help them. Of course, they would be jubilate because maybe there was economic hardship prior to the government being removed. But as a historian and a political analyst, I would tell you the next 6 months to 1 year, you will be hearing a different thing from the residents or the citizens of those countries. There's no way on earth that military rule right now is going to provide any peace and tranquility and prosperity they want. And the indices show it. They're just, happy the fact that the French are gone or the Americans are gone, but that does not solve their problem. The Russians cannot solve their problems. The Russians will kill and maim and not provide the kind of long-standing stability they yearn for. It's just that simple. The few people that go on social media and show, these people, the military government is doing good, is doing that. It is not sustainable. Anybody can go out and devote their limited funds to buy 300 trucks and get people to clap about it and say, I'm bringing change. Where are they getting that money from? Those countries are poor countries. They're one of the poorest countries in the world. They are landlocked. They depend on the French. They depend on foreign assistance. That is why there's a coup. The climate has ravaged their farmland. People have now moved to taking guns and migrating across the Sahara to the Mediterranean to Europe for a better life if they don't go down south. So it's changing the government violent means right now is not going to bring any prosperity. There's the Americans, the Europeans, nobody's going to give them money. And we all know how Russia is. Russia is going through a war right now. Whatever Russia is doing there is not sustainable. We should really be very clear about that.
Okay.
Forget the chorus you've seen on social media. It is not the same. I can tell you for a fact, the indices show they are slightly worse off. And God forgive me, but the next year or so, you will hear something even more dire if they don't change course.
Okay, that's well noted. So finally, as we wrap up on this, Mr. Oshodi, so I'd like to find out from you, when you look at the political elites in Nigeria as we speak, I want to be very honest. Are there lapses, are there areas you feel they could improve in terms of their leadership style, in terms of their deliverables to their constituents, to the people they represent, in terms of governance generally now, so that people can actually, enjoy life more than the way it is right now? I'm looking at a progressive move or a constructive criticism that I feel they could, take as lesson that could help them improve in terms of what they deliver to their people.
I'll ask you one question. Do you think you can improve?
Everybody can.
Exactly. So why do you singling out the political class? Same thing in the UK. Same thing in Australia.
They're the ones in power. They're the ones who come up with the policies. They are the ones who direct, how governance would be. You understand? So basically, it's more or less like having a leadership class come up with a modicum or maybe a template that makes life more better for the people they represent. And that's all I'm asking for.
I think that's what we're going through right now. We're going through reform to make our economy more self-reliant and more attractive to investors. We can't stop. We cannot continue to subsidize everything. Subsidize electricity. Subsidize petroleum consumption. Subsidize all sort of things in our economy. It's killing the economy. So I can see that. But obviously, subsidy is good in some ways. You can subsidize certain aspects of the economy. Maybe, for instance, the CNG coming up, that's going to be a lifesaver for a lot of people that have vehicles. It's a government program that is quite affordable for people. So that is also a certain subsidy that is very favorable for the economy. But I want to put this in a very more international perspective, because I think that's what you invite me here.
Yeah.
I believe Nigeria is going through a phase right now whereby everybody outside, international communities and investors favor the direction which we're going. It's harsh. I believe it's extremely harsh right now for people, but I think we're in the right trajectory. By the grace of God, in the next few months or so, we'll see a different change, a better improvement in our lives and everything. Okay. Well, definitely we're going through a very hurting phase, but we are going through a situation where it's going to be so much stronger and better. Let me take you back to history.
Okay.
Margaret Thatcher went through, because you invited me for international relations, so let me just put everything on international relations perspective. Margaret Thatcher when she came in 1979, she fought to change the British economy by ensuring that socialism and taxes were reduced. She stopped a lot of subsidies. She stopped a lot of benefits for people. She took on the coal miners, who were a very powerful union in those days, and she changed the whole position of the UK economy. UK economy is one of the most dynamic, attractive economy in Europe right now. There's less strikes, and it's flourishing compared to before Thatcher came in. I'll give you another example. In Russia, we had Gorbachev and Yeltsin with their perestroika and glasnost reforms changed the whole trajectory of the Russian economy. It was communism. Then they opened up the market, and then we went through a lot of tough crisis. Now the Russian economy is more stable, apart from this war they just got themselves into. The Russian economy is now a huge capitalist country that is attracting a lot of people. They took it away from the communist waste of the years. It was a very painful process. I remember Yeltsin, it was coup against Yeltsin because people could not buy bread, and there was a lot of suffering. But look at the Russian economy now. There's confidence enough to take on the West and fight in Ukraine. I'll give you another example also. There's China. China with the...
Mr. Ademola Oshodi, we might not be able to, go further on this, but I think I understand what you mean, and everybody's actually hoping that Nigeria will be better off, as a country. And of course, its influence would actually spread, across the continent to bring about positivity and growth, and that would also put Nigeria in a better stead, and of course the continent on a better stead at the global stage. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Protocol, Ademola Oshodi, I thank you so much profoundly for your contribution on the show.
Thank you.